So Navismart is an AI-powered platform that simplifies immigration process, helping you to be able to get right information, which is from verified sources, helping you in or filling the forms, documentations, supporting in this mock interview preparation and all that. So that's what Navismart is. Now, I said coming to America or trying to change your visa once you're here takes two ways. So if anyone here has masters and above, then you could get different pathways that you can use to get your green card through employment-based, work visas, or investments. And so when we talk about employment-based, EB2, which I will discuss, and somebody talked about national interest waiver, I will discuss that. So you have two options, EB1 or EB2. Now, this is where you don't need someone to sponsor you. You can sponsor yourself. As late as 2 weeks ago, I had a friend of mine from Kenya who came here with a green card with the family. And she used EB1A. I will explain what they are. But then that's one way. Others would be when you are sponsored, offered employment, and it will be either H1B, there's O1, which is extraordinary ability. I would say if you are so smart, like, you're just extra, there's something extra about you, you could apply. Of course, when you came as a student, I think Edwin just mentioned that there's OPT, which is optional practical training, or STEM OPT. Those are meant to allow you to work here on temporary basis after your studies. Of course, investments, which is again can also be waived depending on so many other things. If you have a setup here, you can start a setup and then you can use that to support you. Now, all that lead to permanent residence. I will still go back to tell you different types of visas before we get to this level. If, for example, you have extraordinary or exceptional ability, you're an outstanding professor or a researcher, you've been a manager at a multinational organization, you have masters and above, or you're a professional with bachelor degree, or you are skilled with more than 2 years experience. I mean, this is very important. You don't have to have a PhD, you don't have to have a master's, you could have just a bachelor, or you could have experiences. And all those things I'm going to discuss in the next minutes or so. There also be some visas that you get by the fact that you are a religious leader or international organization employee, or you have between 800 and 1 million, 1.05 million, and you're able to create more than 10 jobs or 10 jobs in US, then you can be able to relocate to come to America. This webinar is for you who has advanced degree, who is considered as a special immigrant, who can consider themselves as investors, those who are skilled and are professional in their fields. I want to tell you that there are two types of visas to come into US. One is non-immigrant visa, and two, immigrant visa. The difference is non-immigrant are temporary. They don't give you a right to stay for a long time here. Immigrant visas are visas that allows you to stay here almost permanently. And so the most common one is non-immigrant visa, which are visas that allow you to stay here shortly, and that for reasons that include travel. Probably you are traveling to another country, working, but in a short time, studying, or cultural exchange. Those type of visas, they are called tourist business visas, F1 visas, M1 visas, J1, and Q1. Now, most of the time, people confuse between B1 and B2. If you're here today, please make note of this. B1 is for business meetings. So you're coming for conference, you're coming for business trip, then that is B1. B2 is you're coming for vacation, you are coming to for holidays, you are visiting a family friend or a family member, you're coming for medical treatment, that is B2. And though sometimes they are combination of B1 and B2, depending on, for example, you also coming to visit, you're coming for business meetings, and as well as you're coming to visit a family friend, then that's B1, B2. I just want to give you highlight uh, of what type of visas there are before we get to EB1, I mean EB's visas. Now, anyone who comes here as a student uses F1 visa. But if you're coming for non-academic or vocational training, then you use M1 visa. Now, J1 is for exchange programs, where, for example, teachers from Kenya, I've seen a number of them here. I'm told there are about 800 teachers who came here through J1 for program exchange. And it could be students, it could be scholars, they could be trainees, au pairs, or doctors. Nurses come here from Kenya, for example, through these programs. Now, there's Q1, which is cultural. So, for example, King Nabongo, whatever, coming over here for those program exchanges. So those are types of non-immigrants we have. But also, non-immigrant could also be people who have been employed. So there's H1B, and then there's 2A. Now, H1B visas are those ones, like I said, you are employed by an organization, a company that brings you here. And then H2A for agricultural workers. So if you're working in a farm, I know there are people who have been allowed to come to America because they're coming to work in farms. Some are also coming here, but they're not they're in an agricultural fields, and still they come here through H2A and H2B. Now, if you're a trainee in an academic, those are type of visas you have. There's L as well, which is if you're working for a company, for example, a company, let's say Google, right? You're employed by Google in Kenya, and then you are transferred to come here within the same organization, then you're using AL. Now, O, I had said, O1. These are individuals who have extra ability. For example, you are smart in arts, science, or something. There's something that is extraordinary about you, then you can use that. Of course, you still have to prove that, you have probably, you've been awarded some some awards have been given to you. You've went to competition and all that, so you have to prove. So if you are an athlete, for example, Kenyan runners, you know, could use P as a pathway to coming to America using an immigrant visa. As a religious leader, you use R. Of course, there are others that, for example, you come into America, but your intention is to move to transit to another country. You could use C. If you're a crew member, you're a ship airline, then you can use D. K1 is for fiance. If your husband to be or fiance is American, then you can use K1. And of course, if you're a victim of any certain crimes, you could use that to come. Those are non-immigrant visa. And now I want to move to immigrant. Like I said, immigrant visa, they allow you to stay here for a long time. So there are those that allows you to lawfully stay here as a permanent resident in the US. They include family-based. So for example, immediate family. So your husband is American, and then they invite you to come here right from your country. So it's done before you get here. So before you come to America, there's somebody files for you, and this could be immediate family. That would mean a spouse, you are a child under the age of 21, you're adopted orphan, and of course your parents, you're 25 years and above, and 21 plus years and above. Then also, yeah, that can happen. Now, there's another one where we call them family preferences. So you are not as related close as I've mentioned above there. Then you have siblings, for example, you have unmarried children, then you have adults. All that can still fall under family-based visas. Now, we all know about diversity lottery, which is a common, well-known visas from Kenya. They were cancelled. I think they were cancelled this year. So this year, I think there were no applications. So that is another way. Another one is through humanitarian categories. So refugees coming over here, especially immigrants, juvenile coming here. There's T visas for victims of trafficking and you for victims of certain. So like remember I had mentioned V earlier for non-immigrant, but also here, depending on your situation, um, then you can use the V visas for certain crimes. So then lastly, and very importantly, is what we're going to discuss, employment-based visas. So they start from B1 to B5. B1 being the top tier. It's you probably have a lot of education, research work. It's the fastest, but it's not the only way. There's EB2, which is advanced skills. Probably you have master's degree. EB3, skilled professionals. And so in this case, you don't have to have a degree, for example. But if you have a degree, advantage for you. But if you don't have, even if you don't have, but you are skilled, you could use your skill. You have a lot of, experience in what you are doing. Then you could use EB2. Now, EB4 is for especially migrants. So if, for example, you are a religious worker or you're a humanitarian worker, you're working for international organization, for example, people who supported US military in Afghanistan, some of them, they were given those kind of visas to come here. EB5 is for people who want to invest. And I'd mentioned earlier, if you want to invest between 800 to 1.05 million US dollars, then you can use that. And of course, you're able to create at least 10 jobs a year. So I will take you the next process, how the process works. Why would somebody want to consider EB over any other visas? And then I will tell you each category who can qualify for EB1, EB2, EB3, and EB4 in more detail. Now, why is this EB very important, right? It allows you to relocate here to US from your country permanently. It allows you to move with your family. It is not like H1B, which is a lottery. You have to win it. You apply. You cannot be. You don't guarantee that you got to have it. It's a strong path for people who are talented, researchers, founders, and of course, professionals. So don't worry. There are two ways through which you can pursue EB visas. One is you can petition yourself. You don't have to have an employer to do it. Whether you are in US here already or you are outside US, you can still do it. You don't have to have an employer, but if you have to have an employer, there are conditions. So for example, if an employer has to do a petition for you, then they have to have you have to have an employer agreement, which allows employer to agree to sponsor and confirm your job, and of course, salary as well as location. Now, if you're self-employed, then you have to have you apply for National Interest Waiver, which is NIUW, and that is EB2. Otherwise, EB1A has no restriction. You can do it by yourself, most of them. So if you're here and you're professional and you want to pursue this, please consider applying EB1A and EB2. But EB2, you remember, you have to apply for National Interest Waiver. And I will tell you why you have to apply for it. It shows that your expertise will benefit America. And I will explain that more in details after this. So then there's something, if you are somebody, if it's employer the one petitioning for you, then you need to get what you call permanent or PAM, permanent employment certificate, which is a labor certification, and with a field that shows that you, I mean, employer proves that you're qualified as a US worker and the job is available for you. Now, as somebody doing this for yourself, then what just you need to do is to gather evidence. For example, the achievement you've had, and this is very important. So I'm telling you this so that you get to know what you need to have. So as somebody who is qualified, then you need to have, achievement. Whatever word you have had, all the publications that you've done, any recognition you've been given by your organization, by probably the state, head of state, whatever, those are the evidence that will help you. And of course, a national impact. So you also have to show the national impact. Then the next one, you prepare a form called I-140, right? That form, okay, employers, it's be prepared by employer. For your case, if you're applying by yourself, then you just need to include the supporting document to it. Now, after applying, after filling out from I-40, right? You submit to USICS, which is the immigration body here, and then if it's approved, then a date is given to you. So somebody who's doing for themselves, you submit again, just like the organization will do it. If approved, the date is established. And then you fill out a form called I-485, which is adjustment of the status here in the US. So then you can be able now to get a date and wait for your green card to be available. The green card processing, you could adjust, like I said, by filling out form I-485, and that then you'll probably go to appear to them. You're going to be invited for the interview, and then that happens. So that is the general process. Your own self-petitioning or the employer doing it for you. If you're to have to suppliers to do it for you, you know what to do. Then if you're doing it by yourself, then of course the most important thing is just showing that you have the evidences. In this case, evidence.
I've had some experiences with EB1, and it's something that I'm working on right now. I have some of my friends who have had some experiences too, and many of them have managed to get EB1 just by self-petitioning. And one of the things that some of them have done, is apart from the evidences and fulfilling the three, you have 10 categories for EB1, but you only need to fulfill 3 of them. But apart from that, that is the first layer that the immigration department looks at. But the second layer that is very, very important, that I've just learned about it when I had an experience with them, is how would you provide evidence to them that your impact is actually national or global. And that is something that you've mentioned, because sometimes when we go for these petitions, we just think probably if you fulfill 3 categories, you've judged the work of other people, or probably you've published something that is academic literature that is very, very important, or you've won an award or something like that, like a Nobel Peace Award. So you might fulfill those 3, but then they come again and look at the overall picture of you as an expert, and the importance that you have nationally. So some of the things that people have done, for example, some of my friends, speaking conferences that have some national impact, like NSB, Afrotech. If you get opportunities to be able to speak to some of those conferences, you can actually make an argument that you're nationally recognized, and that is why, and as an expert, and that is why they invite you to speak in some of those conferences. And yeah, I know they don't just invite people to speak in those conferences if you do not have some level of expertise. And some of my friends have used that as an argument to show them that, hey, apart from fulfilling the three categories that are required and nationally recognized, because I've been able to speak to conferences, I've been able to be invited in schools where I've impacted knowledge to students here in the US and all that.
And so the conference is coming, it's Kenyan Diaspora Conference in Washington, D.C. If anyone of you is interested and probably want to take part in participating, please, I've just shared that. It's www.kusat.tech, Kenya, www.kusat.tech. Then you can be able to get more information on the upcoming conference. And then how do you get what you don't have? So EB1 is also in different, like three, EB1A, EB1B, EB1C. And so in this table, if you look at it, then I have what you need in terms of qualifications, what are the requirements and examples. So EB1 is somebody who has extra ability, extraordinary ability, right? They're the top talent, top tier talents, either in science, businesses, education, athletics, whatever. And then you need evidence of sustained national, international, uh, achievement, and you can self-petition. So, for example, you've won a Nobel Peace Prize. You're internationally recognized. Recently, I think there's a lady who won Guinness Book of Record, right, for just holding a tree. I'm not sure that counts, but I'm looking at that. That's something that's recognized globally, right? You started at a startup that really, viewed as national and international. Those are some of the things, and of course, you're creating global impact. So if you have an organization or a company that employs international people or is really creating impact globally, then that is one way of how to go about this. And so EB2 is for those who want research and the professors. EB2, I mean EB1, I mean EB1B. So there are people at research. You need at least 3+ years as a teacher or a researcher. You need a job from the US employer and the evidence of recognition. So in this case, then probably you need to be employed for EB 1B. So professor with multiple publications, you've led some research, you are a scientist, then you can apply for EB 1B. EB 1C is those who have worked for international organizations as managers or executives. You need to be a manager or an executive, for example, and then you need to have had that experience for more than a year, and at least, more than a year in the last 3 years. So it's not like you had it 5 years ago. So then, then that's what you need to have. Of course, you need to have a job offer to you to get this. So probably you are a regional manager working for an international organization, you as a company, for example, or UN, or for example, or you're a director in an organization, then you could easily apply for this. EB2, then you have to have advanced degree, that's master's and above, and of course exceptional ability. Then you need a certificate. Labor certification usually required, unless you are doing it as NIW, which is National Interest Waiver. You're doing a self-petitioning. So then you don't need that. Otherwise, you need that certificate, PAM certificate that I talked about. This could be somebody who has a master's degree, could be architects, or who has won some award for designing great, things. Could be entrepreneur with the technology, that benefits the infrastructure in the US. So if you, for example, you develop a platform, like a solution that will not we solve a problem which US views as an interest for them, then that could be another way of doing that. So if you think of self-petition, please consider EB1, A, and EB2, and then ask for national interest waiver. So EB3 are a skilled worker with at least 2 years experience. Of course, you need a job offer. It takes longer time, and you could be either a nurse, electrician, a chef, IT support. So you don't have to have advanced degree to be able to do this. And as you see, even nurses, even teachers, they come here, but they get job offers first. Then you could be using EB3. So then even electricians, you don't have to have an advanced degree to do that. Another way is a professional. So you have a bachelor degree. You also need a job offer and of course the certificate, labor certification. This could be an accountant with a degree, a software engineer with a degree, as well as marketing manager with a degree. Others would include if you have less 2 years experience, but you are very unskilled, then you need labor certificate, you need a job employment. This could be somebody like housekeeper, farm worker, restaurant, and many others. So people don't understand that even somebody who did not go to school could still relocate as as a permanent resident here in the US. All that you need to know which pathways to follow and what it entails. Now, EB5, you can also apply for NIW, by the way. You can for EB5, but you just have money. If you have 1 million US dollars today, you can apply and you show that you can create more than 110 or more jobs for the US. You can invest in the US. You are an active participation. You have active participation in businesses. You are entrepreneur, for example. You have a tech startup. You're an investor creating business or funding a job, creating infrastructure. Then you can qualify for that. Okay. So if you're in Kenya, if you're in US already, and probably you had applied for, asylum, then you could still apply for this. If you're here and probably you're a student, you could still apply for any of those EB visas. Now, a permanent labor certification, PAM, is issued by the Department of Labor, which allows employer to hire a foreigner or a foreign worker to work permanently in the US. Yes, I hope now this is clear. It's offered by the Department of Labor in the US. It's given to the employer to allow the employer to hire you to work in the US permanently. So it's not those ones that talk about certification you're doing. It's issued by the government of US. So it confirms that no one is qualified to do whatever you're able to do in US, and the worker will not negatively affect, and your working here will not affect negatively, in the US. So then probably, you could be doing something that will harm US in terms of environment and many other ways, right? So yes, your job cannot be done by anyone, but if they feel that your job will harm US, then they will not allow you. So that your job must be something that will not affect US or in a negative way. Now, National Interest Waiver is an exception to job certification requirement. So if you don't want to go through PAM way or labor certification, then you apply for National Interest Waiver. And I know a friend of mine who was here. He became here for postdoc, applied for interest waiver when he was here, went back to Kenya. Took some time, but he was able to come back with EB2. So then under EB2, where you don't need a job offer, you don't need an employer, you don't need labor certification, you can do self-petitioning, and then your work clearly benefits United States. Those are the things that you may need. So somebody asks, how do I then apply? Then you just need to show that your job will clearly benefit the US. And I believe all the jobs that we have can benefit US. So example is that as you are in STEM, you're in AI innovation, healthcare, public health, clean energy, climate solution, education and research, entrepreneurship and job creation, national security, as well as cybersecurity, all that, plus many that I've not mentioned here. And at some point, I also talked about the processes, and there is the form iPhone I-140, right, which is using it for petitioning. The employer can do it if the employers were doing it for you, or you can do it by yourself if you're doing self-petitioning. You used to apply for employment-based EB visas, and this would be, EB1, EB2, EB3. But EB5 is different. You're going to use not Form I-40 anymore. You're going to use Form I-526. That's just the name of those forms. Those are available. If you want to see how they look like, you can go to our platform, Smart AI, and then you download that form. You will see how it looks like. So the reviews include whether you're eligible for the category you have offered for. Remember, there are categories 1 to 5. The evidence that includes education, experience, and achievements. And if the employer doing it for you, then the employer has to prove that he has the ability to pay for you or to pay you for the services you're offering. And of course, national interest argument. That is also a thing that Karen has mentioned. You really have to prove that, whatever experiences you have is for the national interest. And then that marks the presentation for the day.